Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe right here on J&J Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitch TV, Twitter, and on YouTube. I am Jonah Malkin with you every single Monday and Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. This is a special birthday edition of Morning Joe. Appreciate you taking some time making this show a part of your Wednesday morning plans. Year number 24, the Kobe year, a lot to get into, previewing the Super Bowl 54 between the Chiefs and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Nets and the Clippers had a wild game last night. LeBron interacting with Courtside Karen, and of course, a good friend of the show, Jonathan Rifkind, will be joining me later in the top or the bottom half of the hour. So, first of all, super excited. This is Super Bowl week, Sunday, Chiefs, Tampa Bay, the two biggest quarterbacks in the sport, Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes, matching up this week. Super excited for that. The Chiefs trying to become the first team to win back-to-back Super Bowls in more than 15 years. All great stuff. But what's really interesting is when you look back, because the Super Bowl is always the bookend and the end book of the year, right, of 2020. And everyone kind of was defining 2020 as a really unprecedented year. If you had to write the epitaph for 2020, it would be the year of the unpredictable, right? Everyone thinks this year has been unpredictable. Sports have been shut down. Societies have been closed. We had to experience sports in a bubble. We've never seen that before. And yet, despite all that, through all this haze, through all this clutter, the one thing that, in fact, has actually been the most predictable have been sports. Let's think about this. You look at the NBA. The Lakers won the championship. That was probably one of the most predictable things last year. LeBron and AD matching up, pairing up for the first time ever as teammates. People predicted the Lakers to win. They've won their 17th title, right? They've won 11 in the modern era, the most for any franchise, pretty much officially cementing themselves as the best NBA franchise right now. And they have the game's biggest attraction and biggest star in LeBron. He's the most relevant player in the NBA. People predicted that the Lakers would win. In baseball, in the World Series, the Dodgers won the World Series. Sure, they hadn't won a World Series since 1988, but they'd been on the precipice and had been viewed as a favorite over the last 3 to 5 years. And then they make the trade for Mookie Betts. And what did pundits say? What did journalists say? Well, they predicted that the Dodgers would win the Super Bowl. And the common nexus between these winners, why is it that these teams have won? Because they featured players that have maintained the most relevancy in their respective sport. They've been the most relevant. You look at this matchup between Tom Brady and Kansas City, and they feature the two most relevant quarterbacks in the NFL. They feature guys on the two most relevant teams this year. The storylines all throughout the offseason. Kansas City, can they repeat? Patrick Mahomes, defending Super Bowl champion, an MVP 2 years ago. All the talk was, the final 7 games of the regular season with Patrick Mahomes, they were struggling. They weren't able to beat teams by more than 6 points in their final 7 games. And so all these questions were being thrown at Patrick Mahomes. Can he do it? Is Andy Reid going to be able to light a fire underneath this team, or are they just kind of lollygagging and assuming that they're just going to steamroll through the competition? Yet despite all that, to start the year, people looked at the Kansas City Chiefs and they said, this is the best team in football, without question. And so we're predicting that the Chiefs will reach the Super Bowl. And they did. Now, on the flip side, Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, think about which team has been scrutinized the most and been in the spotlight every single week. That's been the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Every single week, we're assessing their performance, we're evaluating their performance, we're giving them a letter grade every single week. And why? Because they've got one of the two most relevant quarterbacks at the helm in Tom Brady. Now, it's true that he joined a franchise and he led an organization that had epitomized mediocrity over the last 13 years and hadn't reached a Super Bowl or won a Super Bowl since 2002. And that in and of itself is a tremendous, tremendous accomplishment. There's no question about that. But the individual himself, yes, he's 43. But you're looking at a guy, Tom Brady, who is the winningest football player, let alone quarterback, winningest football player in NFL history. The guy who has reached the most number of Super Bowls in NFL history, his 10th, is a guy by the name of Tom Brady. And the fact that Tom Brady is in the Super Bowl was very predictable. You think about NFL players. Who would you predict would be in the Super Bowl? Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the AFC, on the best team in the AFC in Kansas City. And Tom Brady, the greatest and winningest quarterback in NFL history. Sure, again, I understand that the Buccaneers weren't necessarily favored as a team, but what was predictable is the quarterback that they have. And again, why is this important? Why were these teams predicted to win? Because they featured guys that were the most relevant. Relevancy is absolutely everything. And so it's not surprising that the two teams that we've dissected and discussed the most this year are the two teams that are in the Super Bowl. And what makes it additionally special, again, is that the Bucs are the first team to be playing in a home Super Bowl. There's never been, at least in 54 Super Bowls, this is going to be year 54, there's never been a team that's gotten the opportunity to play at their home field. And Tampa Bay is going to be able to do that. And again, Mahomes and Brady have been the two most frequently discussed quarterbacks since they last met in the AFC Championship game 2 years ago in that epic overtime win for New England, 37-31. Tom Brady pulls it out at Arrowhead Stadium. And that was the first little taste and glimpse of what we now know as Patrick Mahomes. And he was fantastic in that season, won the MVP, 50 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. He was absolutely fantastic, right? Since that time, think about the two quarterbacks you've discussed the most. And so when you actually look at this matchup, and you break it down, this is the ultimate juxtaposition, the ultimate dichotomy. Because the manners in which these two teams have reached these points are diametrically opposed. You're looking at the best team in the NFL in Kansas City that has shown that throughout the entire season, best record in the NFL, 14-2, taking on the hottest team in the NFL in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, having to win 3 straight road games. That's only happened 5 times in NFL history where a team has managed to reach the Super Bowl after winning 3 straight road games. That's never happened before. We've never, ever seen that before. And so you're looking at a guy in Tom Brady. Again, he's 43, but as hard as it is to believe, he is winning by a landslide for the most passing yards this postseason, 880 passing yards this postseason. That's 300 yards more than the second closest guy. So you're talking about two teams that have been clicking. The Chiefs obviously found their groove against the Buffalo Bills. They ran away with that 38-24. Really wasn't even that close at all. And the Chiefs that had to fight on the road and scrap their way, claw their way to this Super Bowl. And yet, yeah, now they're here. The other thing that I've always posited is, and I will repeat it again, it's not that defenses win championships. It's that timely defensive plays win championships. I've said that. I've reiterated that the entire season. You can check out the very first show that I have ever recorded on Morning Joe. Because at the end of the day, you look at both of these teams, their defenses aren't elite, but they've got specific playmakers that can impact the game. You look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the Green Bay Packers. The key sequence in the game, Tom Brady throws 3 interceptions in the second half, but specifically the last 2 interceptions he threw at the end of the third quarter and at the top of the fourth quarter, with the Bucs hanging on to a game leading 28-23, and they managed to force Aaron Rodgers into 2 straight 3-and-outs, 2 straight punts. The Tampa Bay defense was not a top 5 defense in the league this year. Wasn't even a top 10 defense in the league this year. But when you've got specific guys, Devin White leads the postseason in tackles with 26. Shaq Barrett and JPP, Jason Pierre-Paul, have combined for 5 sacks this postseason. Sean Benting Murphy, leads the postseason with interceptions with 3. These guys have been playmakers all season long, but it's coming through in the postseason. Again, as a collective group, the defense wasn't great, but when they needed to make plays, they did. And then you look at the Chiefs against the Browns. Perfect example. Mahomes goes out with a concussion. That could have been the defining moment of the season for the Chiefs. And instead, when Baker Mayfield and the Browns offense are trailing by 5 with 6 minutes left and had all the momentum, they were riding this incredible wave. Mahomes is out. This was their opportunity to seize the moment. And the Chiefs defense forced a 3-and-out. Tyrann Mathieu, Bashawn Breeland, Chris Jones. The collective defense hasn't been there all season, but what has been there all season are the playmakers. Tyrann Mathieu, right? So that's the important thing when you start to look at these matchups. And again, you can throw all the stats out the window. Now, I understand that in the first matchup, the Chiefs won 27-24. And to be honest, it didn't feel nearly as close as it was, even though down the stretch, it became a nip and tuck type of game. But the Chiefs jumped out to a huge 20-0 lead. Tyreek Hill had 13 catches, 269 yards, 3 touchdowns, over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns in the first quarter alone. Patrick Mahomes was sensational, 37-49, like 465 yards, 3 touchdowns, over a 91 QBR. Everything went perfectly for a Chiefs team that honestly had kind of been sputtering on offense for the last several weeks. And people had circled that date on the calendar. And now you look at the Chiefs and you take a step back, you zoom out, and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce not only are some of the best wide receivers and tight end duos in the NFL, they finished second and third in the NFL in receiving yards. A wide receiver and a tight end on the same team finished second and third in receiving yards. And unfortunately for the Buccaneers, they don't have too many guys that can match up with them. And when you factor in, as great as Brady has been, he threw 3 interceptions against Green Bay. Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers couldn't take advantage of that. They couldn't turn those into points. But Brady threw 2 interceptions against the Kansas City Chiefs in the first go-around. And if he throws interceptions again against the Chiefs in round 2, it's not even going to be that close. But again, this is a Super Bowl. The stakes are much higher. And so I don't anticipate that it will feel as lopsided as the game actually went. I think that there are going to be some ebbs and flows, but it's going to be competitive throughout the entire game. And again, cannot wait to see what types of adjustments Bruce Arians, Todd Bowles makes to try and defend Patrick Mahomes, because Mahomes has been the best quarterback on QB pressures, on blitzes. He gets rid of the ball extremely quickly. So who you're going to have to match up against Tyreek Hill? I understand that Carlton Davis is back, but he's probably going to be exploited a bit. And then who are you going to put on Travis Kelce? Devin White? He can. He's a physical linebacker. It's possible. But right now, I just think that the other piece of it is as great and magical as Tom Brady is, and he's absolutely spectacular. There is no question about that. But there's a new wonderkind, and his name is Patrick Mahomes. And he spreads this pixie dust over his team that just permeates the locker room, and he's got that invaluable winning intangible. He just finds ways to win football games. And I don't think we give enough credit to Tom Brady for how he's been able to do that throughout his entire career. And now to Patrick Mahomes for a guy that just finds ways to win the football game. You play to win the game. And that is one of the most invaluable traits you can have. And so because of that, I'm just of the mindset that is fantastic of a run, as incredible of a run as it's been for Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, and the fact they're getting a chance to host for the first time a playoff game and that be the Super Bowl. It is a fantastic story, and Tom Brady should be commended for that. No one's going to question his leadership. No one's going to question his talent anymore. I think that while Bill Belichick still has a chance to prove himself as a winning coach, Tom Brady has certainly solidified his part in the Patriots dynasty, so he doesn't really have much else to prove. But this year, I think, just belongs to the Chiefs. I just think they're in too much of a rhythm. They're in too much of a sync. And I think the score is going to be the exact same. I'm predicting that the Chiefs are going to beat the Bucs 27-24, which was the same score in their first go-round. The difference is this game's going to be competitive throughout. But again, let's go back to the very beginning of the season. If you were to talk about who were the two most relevant quarterbacks in the NFL, Mahomes and Brady. And what do they have in common? They're playing for the Super Bowl, which was very, very predictable. Very predictable. Peter Pajoli giving me a shout out. Happy birthday, Jacob Holton. Happy birthday, my aunt, Barbara Feinberg, watching the show. She says, go Tampa Bay. Don't forget about Sue. And Ndamukong Suh, of course, played his college football at Nebraska. I have a lot of family from Nebraska, so of course I have to give out a shout out to Ndamukong Suh. Not to mention he played for the Rams a little bit not too long ago as well. And listen, he's going to have a big job because you're going to have to at least block up and shore up the run game and ensure that Clyde Edwards-Helaire can't torch you. And we'll see what type of impact Le'Veon Bell can have, but appreciate the shout outs, and I cannot wait to see the Super Bowl unfold. Okay. I want to transition to the NBA. So Clippers and Nets had an absolute thriller last night. Listen, the NBA season's a long season. 82 regular season games. That's a long, long time. We say baseball is extremely just stretches out for 162 games. Okay, the NBA season feels long, and there are always about 5 games per season that we view in a different light, that have a different feel to it. The vibe's different, the magnitude increases, the stakes are raised, the intensity is ratcheted up. There are always 5 games typically define the season and are used as measuring sticks for teams. Maybe it's a finals preview. Maybe it's a playoff preview. Typically a matchup between two teams in the opposite conferences, right? And last night, the Nets prevailed over the Clippers 124-120. And this was legitimately the most entertaining, the most thrilling, the most captivating basketball game that I've seen all season long. And that's saying a lot because I'm a Lakers fan. You can see the 2 Laker jerseys behind me. I'm a big Lakers guy. So the fact that I'm acknowledging that the Clippers were a part of the most thrilling NBA game this season says a lot. Maybe it's my birthday, so I'm just being generous and friendly today. I don't know. But I'd be lying if I said that last night you were not hooked watching that television set, because I was from start to finish. And it's not just the fact that you had Kyrie and KD and Harden going up against Paul George, Kawhi, and the Clippers. It's that both of these teams needed this game, not only for their own spotlight, not only for their own sheen, but to address certain issues. There had been so much talk. You look at the Brooklyn Nets, and what have we been saying about them for, I don't know, since day one, is how atrocious their defense has been all season long. They were on this historically bad pace, giving up 120 points on the season. Prior to the Harden trade, they'd been giving up 113 points. After post-Harden trade, they've been averaging giving up 125 points per game, which is absurd. And so the question marks coming into this game were, could they turn the switch? Because ultimately, this is the regular season, and come postseason time, is this team capable of switching that mental switch, turning on that mental light, and actually playing competitively, taking it personal, having some defensive pride? And so the first takeaway is, yes, the Brooklyn Nets are capable of playing lockdown defense. Now, I know what you're going to say, Jonah, what are you talking about? They gave up 120 points. And I understand that. But to me, that was the best defensive performance that they've played all season. Now, maybe that's saying more, maybe that speaks more to, again, how porous of a defensive team they've been all season. Valid argument. But to me, I saw the activity. I saw how engaged they were. James Harden, for crying out loud, was defending Kawhi Leonard extremely well. He was contesting shots. You had Kyrie switching. Joe Harris was deflecting the passing lanes. They were engaged. And Kyrie was trying to guard Paul George, and he actually did a pretty adequate job. Paul George kept clamoring for fouls. He was only given one. And a lot of that is to the credit of the feistiness of the Brooklyn Nets and the fact that they were packing the paint and refusing to allow the Clippers to penetrate and drive to the basket. And again, I understand they gave up 120 points, but this was the first glimpse that we saw that the Brooklyn Nets actually perhaps could be an adequate defensive team. And then you saw how prolific they were on offense. We knew how unstoppable they were on offense. But that leads to the second takeaway, which is that, listen, I love James Harden. He's had a tremendous run as an NBA player. 8 seasons of over 26 points per game in Houston. Was an MVP, has averaged over 30 points the last 3 seasons, over 29 points per game the last 5 seasons. He was the focal point in Houston. This Brooklyn Nets team is not the Houston Rockets. And as much as I love James Harden, and I know he recorded a triple-double last night, I do not want him taking shots down the stretch. I just don't. I'd rather have KD and Kyrie do it. And last night was a perfect example. I understand he capped off a 13-0 run in the fourth quarter after KD hit a 3, Kyrie hit 8 straight points, and then Harden made a jumper. But I don't want James Harden being the closer on this team. And I always feel like because he's now kind of fell into this point guard role once again, and it's not surprising because Mike D'Antoni is the assistant coach, but I don't want him taking the shot at down the stretch. Look at Kevin Durant. He had 28 points on 13 shots. He was 11 of 13 for 28 points. He's the most efficient scorer that I've ever seen in basketball. The most efficient scorer. And then you have a guy, Kyrie, who drops 39 points, including 11 points in the fourth quarter on 3-for-3 shooting and 2 free throws. And again, I understand how Kyrie is viewed, his mercurial nature, and he's a very intelligent individual. And what he does off the court sometimes befuddles me, and it really just is confusing to everyone. But at the same time, what he gives you on the court is a premium over almost every other guard in the NBA. His shot-making ability and his footwork are absolutely impeccable. He's learned that from Kobe Bryant, God rest his soul, and he shows it, he displays it every time on the court for the Brooklyn Nets. And so this offense can be unstoppable as long as James Harden is not taking shots down the stretch of the games. And I'm sorry, this is not an insult or meant to be as an insult to James Harden, but Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving down the stretch are just better. They can hit different types of shots. Harden really just drives to the basket or steps back and hits a three. KD can hit the pull-up. He can hit the mid-range. He can drive to the basket. He can catch and shoot. He doesn't need the ball in his hands. Kyrie pretty much is dribbling the ball on a yo-yo stick. He's got the best handle in the NBA. Again, he can hit the mid-range. He can finish around the rim, and he can step outside and hit the three-point shot. And Harden hasn't been able to really elevate his game in the postseason and down the stretch of these late games. And unfortunately, we saw it last night. So those are the takeaways for the Nets. For the Clippers, I thought that this was actually a really good performance by a Clippers team that was playing without Patrick Beverley. Patrick Beverley would typically get the assignment of Kyrie Irving. Now, whether or not he would slow him down, it's hard to do. Good offense beats good defense every day of the week. But the key X factor to me for the Clippers, Nicholas Batum. Listen, I remembered seeing him in the opening day game against the Lakers, and I said, wow, Nick Batum's he's back in the NBA. He kind of was sent to Charlotte purgatory for a little bit, and now he came back and has actually had a monster impact for this team. 21 points last night, and you could argue that if it were not for his contributions as kind of acting as the pseudo third wheel of forming a big three in Clipperland, Clippers wouldn't have even been in this game at all. Hit two key threes in the third quarter, hit a clutch three in the fourth quarter. He's long, he's lanky, he can defend. He's giving you 10 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 3.5 assists this year, averaging for his career that spanned over 13 years, 11.5 points per game. This guy has actually been a really valuable contributor to a Clippers team that's kind of needed someone else to step up consistently. Kawhi gives you 33, 5, and 5. Paul George, 26 points, hit some tough shots. And those two have been playing a lot better. And a big reason why is the addition of Ty Lue as the head coach. And that's the other key takeaway is I love the attitude that this team is playing with. And that's all as a reflection, direct reflection of Ty Lue and a different mindset that he has instilled in this team to actually take the regular season seriously, use the regular season as an opportunity to mock what you would do in the postseason. Play with that added intensity. We're seeing that. They're competing. They're not just packing in if they trail a little bit, with the exception of the Dallas Mavericks game, which I still, losing by 50 points at home to the Dallas Mavericks, that still is unbelievable. But so I do like that Ty Lue is leaving his imprint on this team, and every single head coach tries to do it, but not everyone could do it. Doc Rivers, as great of a head coach as he is, he was not able to get these guys to buy in, and Ty Lue has been able to do that. So overall, the Clippers right now are tied for the second best record in the NBA, just half a game back of the Utah Jazz, tied for second with the Lakers. And so overall, again, I was absolutely mesmerized. It was extremely entertaining. It was fun to watch and go back and forth. And again, big three of the Nets going up against the big two of the Clippers. And this honestly could be perhaps a finals preview. I still think the Lakers are going to come out of the West, but the Clippers certainly have the personnel to do it. And the other thing for the Nets is what they showed is they're going to be a tough out in the postseason, man. You got to beat this team 4 out of 7 times. 4 out of 7 times. Good luck. Even for the Lakers, who I think are coming out of the Western Conference, the fact that you're looking at that game and seeing the type of offensive potency that they're getting and how, efficient, they're the most efficient offense in the NBA. And I understand you might look at that with a grain of salt, given that the Mavericks were the most efficient offense last year, but a lot of that was a byproduct of their lack of defense. And it's true the Nets don't play any defense, but really they have the most efficient offense because we've never seen a team with 3 prolific scores all on the floor at the same time outside of an all-star game. We've never seen it. So the Nets are going to be a tough out in this postseason. Again, Morning Joe right here on J&J Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitch TV, Twitter, and on YouTube Mondays and Wednesday mornings, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Joe Gazaldo, happy birthday. Nets looked great last night against the hot Clippers team. Not sure if Clips were a little tired, though. 5 games in 7 days. That's a legitimate comment. Absolutely legitimate comment. And the one team you don't want to face when you're tired and you have heavy legs are the Brooklyn Nets that have been averaging over 120 points per game this year. So it's true. Tough matchup for them. But unfortunately, in this truncated season, every single team is going to have to play back-to-backs. That's just the reality of the situation. Okay. Final topic before I bring on my special birthday guest, Jonathan Rifkind, going to be joining me in a few moments. So Lakers and the Hawks faced off a couple nights ago, and LeBron was dealing with a heckler on the sideline, currently given the moniker of Courtside Karen right now. And first of all, let me say this. One of my favorite commercials and series of commercials is the Progressive commercials with the therapist that is trying to teach his clients to act less like their parents. And you've got the example where he's like, okay, we're going to open up a PDF. Who's next? And you've got all these looks of bewilderment that just like cast over all of these individuals. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And the reason I bring that up is because LeBron grew up and is in such a unique position of growing up at a time when technology was taking off. You were seeing the first iterations of the smartphone, the proliferation of social media outlets. And to me, he's been the best athlete at not only navigating through that and not allowing himself to get engulfed in the criticism online on social media, but actually turning it to his advantage and maximizing it to the point where he's built his brand better than any athlete I've ever seen through social media, through his personality, and through these platforms. And so when he tweets back, Courtside Karen, mad, it's just it's childish, but yet so comical and so relatable because it's absolutely brilliant. It just exactly defines what we're thinking in that situation. It perfectly sums up what that interaction was. Now, again, and I appreciate the fact that he acknowledged that he misses those interactions, that the interactions are part of what make the playing experience much more enjoyable for the players. And he misses that back and forth. Now, again, I don't know exactly what was said. If something was said that was over the line, that crossed the line, okay, you don't have to convince me to kick someone out. And LeBron certainly didn't feel that way. And as a whole, I think that in general, I normally side with athletes all the time. I think that if you're a viewer and you're a spectator, your job is to spectate. Now, you can chirp. That's part of the perks of paying for premium seats like that. But at the same time, it's about protecting the players. And so I'm always going to side with the refs and the players kicking out a fan. Okay? Not to mention with COVID, the fact that her mask was totally down and literally just spitting particles right in his face. Hopefully that doesn't come back to be kind of detrimental. But overall, that's kind of what I would say for that. All right. Again, Morning Joe right here, J&J Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitch TV, Twitter, and on YouTube, Mondays and Wednesday mornings, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific, and a special birthday guest today. And before I bring him on, first of all, he is college football insider, Pac-12 insider, just a sports enthusiast. Really, you can ask him anything, and he can literally name the most obscure and random tidbits about every single college that I've ever seen. And as I welcome Jonathan Rifkind onto the show, Jonathan, first of all, thank you so much for joining me. So,
wait. Happy birthday, Jonah Malkin. 24 years young. How did we make it this far? How has the world progressed with having to care for you up to this point in your life? It bewilders me. But happy birthday to one of my closest and dearest friends.
I appreciate you shaved and got a haircut just for me for today.
Oh, yes. It wasn't a week ago when I got this haircut. Not at all.
All right, Jonathan. So let me ask you this. So I posited that this year has been pretty much the ultimate paradox in sports. I think that everyone was kind of defining the year of 2020 as unpredictable, as unprecedented, right? However, to me, I actually think that this year has been the most predictable sports year when it comes to outcomes. I mean, you look at the NBA, the Lakers won the championship, and when they traded for AD last year, a lot of people predicted that they would win. And you have the marquee guy, the biggest attraction in the game, the most relevant player in LeBron James in the biggest spotlight in the finals. The Dodgers won the World Series, a big brand, a team that was on the precipice of winning for the last 3 years and was favored and predicted to win once they traded for Mookie Betts. And now you've got in the Super Bowl, in my opinion, the two most relevant quarterbacks in Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. And while the Chiefs were predicted to reach the Super Bowl, I understand that the Bucs as a team weren't, but it's pretty predictable that Tom Brady is in the Super Bowl, given that he's the winningest quarterback in NFL history. What are your thoughts on that theory?
I think that's interesting. Minus Tampa Bay. I mean, Alabama, the top 4 teams in college football and making the playoff were predictable. Alabama winning the college football playoff championship was predictable. Dodgers winning the World Series was pretty predictable. Yeah, the Lakers winning the NBA championship, even though the bubble sort of created a more ambiguous scenario, was predictable. So I think that that's a fair evaluation of how sports in 2020 has gone. Now, with that being said, I think 2021, this year, Jonah, is actually a little bit more unpredictable. We don't know what's going to happen with baseball. I think Tampa Bay making the Super Bowl was a little bit unpredictable. I would have had Green Bay by a landslide, honestly. I did have Green Bay by a landslide midseason. And then, of course, Tom Brady doing what he does, turns on the Jets in the postseason. But I think that this year, the 2021 year is going to be interesting. And for the NBA specifically, if you look at the standings right now, I don't know how predictable the outcomes to this point have been. I mean, we're just over the quarter mark way through the season, right? Utah currently has the best record in the NBA at 16-5. Utah, the Jazz. I mean, I don't know necessarily if that's going to equate to a championship, but they're contenders right now. The Clippers and the Lakers are tied at 16-6 for second and third in the Western Conference. And then from there down, I mean, it's the Nuggets, the Suns, the Grizzlies at 9-7 at 6. I mean, the Eastern Conference, that's a mess. Toronto's out of the playoffs right now. Miami's out of the playoffs right now. The Knicks are on the precipice of making the playoffs right now. The Hornets and the Cavs and the Hawks are all in the playoffs right now. So I think that it's going to be more unpredictable this upcoming season than it was in the previous season. Now, circumstances have made things super, super weird with COVID and players doing this, that, and the other. But yeah, I think that your assertion for the 2020 sports year was pretty accurate.
It's actually interesting the note about 2021 in that has been proven to be a bit more unpredictable. I like that. So I also contended that for me, this Super Bowl is bigger for Patrick Mahomes to me than it is Tom Brady. Not that you can't make arguments in Brady's favor, because you certainly can, but to me, because you have a guy in Patrick Mahomes who, yes, he's maturing and he's gaining more experience, but this is a guy who's aspiring to be the greatest of all time, and having an unblemished record, I think, could go a long way. And especially for someone who's facing a guy in Tom Brady who's already 43 years old. And to me, if he loses this game, I just don't think that any future win over Brady will give him the same credit and will merit the same type of respect that it probably deserves. Just because, listen, you can make an argument Brady's not getting younger, or at least not getting older, but he's certainly not getting younger. So to me, this is a bigger Super Bowl for Patrick Mahomes. What say you?
That's an interesting point. Look, Tom Brady's played in a quarter of the Super Bowls, which is insane to think about, right? We're 50-something in, and Tom Brady's been in a quarter of that, which speaks to just an addition to his legacy that's already equated him to probably the greatest quarterback of all time, at least of our generation. I think it's bigger for Pat Mahomes also because it gives him an opportunity to beat his predecessor, right? Everybody's talking about how this is the Super Bowl of the GOAT versus the baby GOAT, if you will, right? Yoda versus baby Yoda. And I think that's a fair assumption, a fair acquisition for this Super Bowl. Why? Because it's true. I think Pat Mahomes is going to be the next. He already is the best quarterback in the NFL. Now, he's the guy that we perceive as perhaps taking over Tom Brady's legacy when that legacy is it's time to take it over, right? Tom Brady said yesterday that he would play until he's 46, 47, 48. So maybe we will see more Tom Brady versus Pat Mahomes matchups in the postseason. Now, with that being said, you're right. Regular season matchups against Tom Brady from here on out probably won't mean as much because of his age, because he's playing in Tampa Bay, because it seems like he definitely is most definitely on the back nine of his career. But yeah, I think that for Pat Mahomes, this is a bigger stage in terms of his legacy, in terms of the fact that he's facing again his predecessor, and that would speak more to the future of his career.
Not to mention, I think that this is also the first time that Mahomes is facing an opponent who can actually be viewed as his equal. And so when you're going up against guys that aren't necessarily contemporaries, but are viewed as just as talented, or at least as good as you are, I think that can go a long way. Okay, so I think that the Super Bowl is going to be won by the Chiefs, but I do think that the score is going to be the exact same. I think it's going to be 27-24. It's just that the manner of the game is going to be a lot more competitive throughout. What are your thoughts on this Super Bowl, and how do you think it's going to play out this weekend?
Yeah, no, I think that's fine. I think that is probably what's going to happen. Everybody says Tampa Bay is probably going to pull it out because of the experience with Tom Brady. But I do think that the weapons that the Chiefs have definitely give Pat Mahomes the edge. Now, is his toe better? That's what I want to know, because he did have that injured toe in the previous two games. And is that defensive line ready to go? Because if that defensive line doesn't pressure Tom Brady into making a mistake or two, there is a chance that they blow this game. So with that being said, I do think that it's going to be somewhere 27-24, 35-27. But I do think the Chiefs offense will outshine the Tampa Bay offense. And look, at the team that turns over the ball is going to be the team that loses. So I think that that's going to play a big part in this. And both these teams don't really turn over the ball. Now, Tom Brady did have those 3 interceptions against the Packers. He still won the football game. So I give it to the Kansas City Chiefs by a smidge. With that being said, Jonah, we actually have a couple of questions here on the chat. Remember a guy named Blake Ruffino? He has a question for me. He actually, whoa. Happy birthday, Jonah.
Yeah, let's keep that one. No one really cares about the recruiting question. Let's keep the birthday one on.
I care about the recruiting question.
Thank you, Blake. Appreciate it.
Hey, Blake, two big recruiting outcomes today that I was happy about, not necessarily surprised. Davon Townley committing to Penn State. Penn State had a couple of really tough transfers this past week, mostly because right now it looks like they're going to end up in the middle of the pack in the Big Ten. Jonah could speak to that a little bit. But getting 4-star Davon Townley is a big get for a team that is going to need some talent to get back on top of the Big Ten in the upcoming season. Then Rajon Davis, he committed to USC, another big USC prospect that I think we all knew. Yeah, you just said it, Rajon Davis to USC. I think that I knew he was going to USC, but there were whispers that he may be going to an SEC school. I'm happy that he chose the Trojans. He's going to stay at home in the Pac-12, and hopefully the Pac-12 is going to.
And Johnny, Eric Gilbert just transferred from.
Yeah, but I don't want to make him upset.
He left LSU, and listen, he's going to Florida. Kyle Pitts was just there.
I don't want to upset Blake Ruffino in the chat.
Isn't going to be throwing him the ball, but listen, that could be pretty good. Okay, all right. I know you can go off on a tangent with all this stuff. So, okay, let's bring it back in. Let's reel it back in. All right. So the Rams traded for Matthew Stafford. To me, listen, if you're in a really contentious relationship that you think's having a deleterious effect on you, I don't think no amount of legal fees that you're going to pay are going to be enough if it gets you that divorce, if it gets you out of the relationship. So I don't think there is too steep a price to pay for a guy that you think that you've identified is the guy, is going to get you over the top. And so the Rams traded a lot. They gave a haul to Detroit to acquire Matthew Stafford. But to me, when you have a championship-ready defense whose window is shortening, you have to push your chips to the table. You have to do what you have to do if you think that you're one piece away. What did you think about the Rams trading for Matthew Stafford? Do you think they gave up too much to acquire him?
No, I think it was a good trade for both teams. A lot of people, I'm getting mixed reviews. Getting mixed reviews here in Los Angeles, Southern California area about this trade. Some people, some analysts actually think that it was a terrible trade. They think that why would you trade for basically a guy who hasn't won with better pieces in the past with the Lions than Jared Goff has had with the Rams. Now, I disagree with that because the one thing that Matthew Stafford has never had is Sean McVay. And Sean McVay has been to a Super Bowl with a team that didn't have a lot of pieces, but a really good defense. And guess what? This team has better offensive pieces. They're more developed. They finally have a little bit of a backfield. It seems like that Cam Akers is developing into their what will eventually equate to be their elite running back. And they already have a great defense. So what they're missing is the veteran leadership, a guy that you can rely with a little bit of consistency inside the pocket. No, Jared Goff is Jared Goff is younger, a little bit more malleable, if you will, at the quarterback position. But Matthew Stafford is the veteran. He's the chiseled, gritty guy that you need to come in to lead your offense. And again, youthful backfield, Cam Akers, he's going to shine with the leadership that Matthew Stafford brings, right? With the playbook being open. And I think the Sean McVay clout and his expertise, we've seen him as one of the young phenoms at the coaching level in football, not just NFL, but in college as well. And I think that pairing him, like I said, with Matthew Stafford, with the weapons that they have, Cooper Kupp coming back healthier, and Robert Woods, who has been fantastic for the Rams back home in LA, all these different guys. And then, the defense comes back full force. Maybe they get a piece or two in the offseason at the linebacker position specifically. I do think the Rams, that was a really good trade. Now, with the Lions, they need to gear up for the future, right? So getting those second round picks, those first round picks, and then a young guy in Jared Goff, who again is malleable, who they can mold with this new coaching staff. If they can find some consistency with the weapons that they have, I think that would also allow them to make some noise out there in the NFC. So I'm cool with both sides of this trade. I think it benefits the Rams more just because they have better pieces that'll allow them to go and contend for Super Bowl. For the Lions, they're rebuilding for the future. So getting those picks, getting a younger quarterback, that's going to help them execute that plan as well.
Not to mention, you talked about the clout of Sean McVay. If you're Les Snead, if you're Stan Kroenke, you don't invest so much money in a quarterback after you've just invested a lot in your head coach just to trade him away, unless you really believe, hey, this coach knows what the hell he's talking about, and we trust him more than we trust the talent of the quarterback. Okay, let's transition to the NBA. So the Nets and the Clippers, all-time regular season thriller to me. I thought it was the most entertaining basketball game I've seen this year, at least, because there have been a lot of clunkers.
More entertaining than the Wizards Nets game.
I think that with regard to the stakes and how and the nationally televised games and how these games were kind of the anticipation level, the hype surrounding these games, I thought this was one of the first ones that lived up to it. Okay. And for me, some of the takeaways was that, listen, I think we finally saw that the Nets, though not great, can play defense. They are capable of playing defense. Ironically, they gave up 120 points, yet I thought this was their best defensive performance of the season. Now, maybe that's not saying much and speaks more to their porous defense and the flaws that they have, given that on their entire coaching staff, they really don't have one guy who specializes in defense. But
you telling me Thiago Splitter doesn't specialize in defense, Jonah? Come on, give Thiago some opportunity. Give the Spanish hammer from the Spurs some credit here. No,
I forgot Thiago's on there. That's true. I guess he listen, he was known as being a defensive stalwart, so clearly. But the other takeaway, Johnny, is listen, I love James Harden. I do not want him shooting the ball down the stretch. KD and Kyrie are too good. KD had 28 points on 13 shots, 11 for 13. Now, I understand Kyrie's a mercurial cat, and so you don't know always what you're going to get on and off the court with him. But on the court, you're going to get a cold-blooded assassin who's going to drop 39 points, including 11 points in the fourth quarter. I just don't want James Harden shooting it down the stretch. I'm sorry. I've seen this too often. He's great. I don't mind having the ball in his hands to initiate the offense, to create for a bit, at least through the first 46 minutes. Last 2 minutes of the game, I want KD and Kyrie shooting the ball. What were your thoughts and takeaways from last night's game?
I think it depends on the circumstance there, Jonah. That's interesting. That's an interesting take because if you're vying for a three, if you need a three, you need a quick bucket offensively, James Harden's the guy, right? I mean, he's the quickest release in the NBA. He's one of the best pure shooters ever. He's one of the best pull-up shooters ever. He's mastered the step back. I would take James Harden for a quick offensive output for a three or a long two, just something quick. If you need that basket in crunch time over KD and Kyrie, just because I think that he's more reliable and because he releases the ball quicker and because he has the move to create his own space better. Now, KD's step back, sure. KD is one of the best step backs in the NBA. Now, Jason Tatum is proving that his step back is in contention for that award right now. But right now it's Kevin Durant. However, that double dribble step back by James Harden to create space on the long two or the three is paralleled by nobody in the NBA. So if you're looking for that shot, James Harden's your guy. I don't know. I wouldn't feel comfortable with KD or Kyrie as I would with James Harden in that situation. Now, if you have a little bit of time, you need to get your body to the hoop. Kyrie's the best finisher in the NBA by far. I mean, he had a couple of lefty finishes last night, up and around through the defense with Kawhi or Paul George all over him, two guys that are bigger than him, and it wasn't even a contest, right? I mean, this guy, he knows how to finish better than anybody. So in that situation, absolutely Kyrie. And if you're looking for that baseline 8 to 10 footer, if you're looking for the guy with the long arms against the smaller defender, that's where you go with Kevin Durant. So I think it's circumstantial. And James Harden, he's proven that he can hit the big shot. Now, last night, Kyrie was the guy for the Nets. He was the guy that was going to bring it to them for them down the stretch. He proved that in the last 4 minutes of the game. I think he had 18 points in that third quarter also. I mean, he went absolutely off. Now, the Clippers had an opportunity, and I thought it was so funny at the end of the game when Paul George had a wide open three and he bricked it, right? And you sort of go back to that narrative of, is Paul George, is he really the guy do the Clippers even have a guy? Do you trust Kawhi Leonard out there at the 3-point line when they need a three in crunch time? No, Paul George has a higher 3-point percentage, but he has proven time and time again that he can't get it done when they need him to get it done most. And to me, that's my bigger quip with the end of the game. It wasn't that James Harden had the ball because, again, look, they have a plethora of options. They have an abundance of shooters, and that's okay, of closers, and that's okay. But the Clippers, on the other hand, that's where they struggle. Maybe Lou Williams. I think I'm more comfortable with Lou Williams.
Honestly, maybe it's Nick Batum. Just give it to Nick Batum. 21 points last night.
Nick, all
He's been
Nick
an X
Batum
factor
can
all
do.
season.
All Nick Batum can do, though, Jonah, he will not contest at the rim. All he does is go like this. He will not jump. That's why.
He got one deflection when a ball was passed to KD. Come on, give him more credit.
Deflection maybe because he was in the passing lane and it was an errant pass, but he's not. He does not contest at the rim, and he does not roll on the pick and roll. He comes up, he sets a pick, and then he takes himself out of the play. And then there's a double team on
time. He's been shoved into basketball purgatory in Charlotte the last several years. Now he's finally, it's like when you've been in a room that's been dark for like all day, and in the first moment you step into light, you got to kind of open your eyes a little bit.
I don't know, man. Charlotte's looking like a mighty good situation right now. I don't know if
LaMelo Ball's been playing well.
Gordon Hayward is big. Okay. He's an all-star this season, my guy.
Gordon Hayward. Okay, the former Celtic. And speaking of Celtics, and I know you mentioned Jason Tatum. I got to be honest with you, Johnny. To me, right now, Jaylen Brown's looking like the best guy on the Celtics. I've talked to some friends, and one of my cousins is a diehard Boston Celtics fan, even though he's from New York. For some reason, Boston Celtics fans, it's like they come from all over the place. You're a Boston Celtics fan from LA. My cousin's a Boston Celtics fan from New York. Doesn't make any sense. But the bottom line is, I talked to him about it, and what he said is the sentiment shared among a lot of Boston Celtics fans is, listen, Jaylen Brown has been the best player for the Celtics this year, the highest PER on the team. And while I personally think Jason Tatum is the better player, it's hard to argue that he's played better than Jaylen Brown this year. Which wagon are you hitching yourself onto? Jason Tatum bandwagon or the Jaylen Brown bandwagon? Or not bandwagon, but just the wagon?
No, that's an interesting point. And I actually had the same exact conversation last night with a couple of my friends. One who's a Warriors fan, of course. The Celtics were playing the Warriors last night. Jason Tatum is the more important player, and you're right, Jonah. He is the better player. Jaylen Brown has been playing better. Now, why has Jaylen Brown been playing better? Because our expectations were lower for Jaylen Brown, right? Our expectations for Jaylen Brown were that he was going to be maybe a 20 and 5 guy, 20 and 6 guy, 6 assists, maybe 2 or 3 rounds a game. No, now he's a 27-point guy, right? His PR is off the charts. His points per 36 minutes is off the charts. His defense, his perimeter defense is a step up than what we expected it to be. So I think that Jaylen Brown is playing better because our expectations for Jaylen Brown were a lot lower. He's far exceeded our expectations. Now, Jason Tatum, we've expected him to be a star in that NBA. We've expected him to be a top 15 guy. And so for him, he sort of matched our expectations. He's missed a few games because of coronavirus protocol, but he's basically stepped up in the moments where the Celtics needed him to step up. And so, yes, I do think that that Jaylen Brown has been playing better because our expectations have said, okay, Jaylen Brown is not the guy that we see. Hi, Eric. That we've seen as as the guy that is going to lead Boston to these wins. But Jason Tatum is the better player overall.
Interesting. Because, again, I still think that Jason Tatum has got the higher ceiling and is the better player. But it's been hard to argue. You got to give credit to Jaylen Brown.
And I'm not complaining, by the way. I love having this tandem. They were showing a graphic last night at the game that since Larry Bird and Kevin McHale, nobody on the Celtics has averaged 20. No, 2 guys have averaged 26 more points and 5 more rebounds a game until Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And they are 6 years and 7 years younger than those 2 guys doing it. So at 24 and 22 years old, these guys are absolutely killing it. And the Celtics are going to win a championship in the future with these guys. I promise. I promise you.
Right now, they're top 4 scoring duo in the league. Now, as far as the championship, we'll see. We'll see.
Okay, Laker fan. Okay, I see those Kobe Bryant, LaMelo Ball, or Lonzo Ball jerseys.
You're going to have to get through the Bucks and the Nets for at least the next 3 to 4 years. That's all I'm saying. So we'll see. That's all I'm saying.
I don't know if the Bucks are going to be a contender for the next 3 to 4 years. We'll see.
That's fair. Hey, Philly, look out for Philly. Your old boy Doc Rivers, he's coaching them well.
I'm more worried about Philly than I am about Milwaukee.
Fair enough. Jonathan Rifkind, college football, Pac-12 insider, high school recruiter, expert, and a recent not only host of Believe in the Pac-12 and the Jonathan Rifkind Just Recruiting show, but also executive producer of the Ryan D. Leaf show that is going to be airing at the beginning of March. Is that correct?
Yeah, March 1st. Oh, yeah. Go subscribe on YouTube. Ryan D. Leaf show. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Johnny, thank you so much for coming on the birthday special. Always great to catch up with you, man, and talk sports. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Jonah. Happy birthday, my man.
Appreciate it. Jonathan Rifkind, happy to have him on. Oh, wanted to come back really quickly. Wanted to hop back on. Okay. So final topic of the day, my Malkin's moments. I know I'm about a minute over schedule, a couple minutes over schedule today. So Fred VanVleet, for my Malkin's moments, he drops 54 points last night in a win over the Orlando Magic, a career high, 11 for 14 from the three-point line, 17 of 23 from the floor. And this is probably one of my favorite stories and players to follow in the NBA because he signed the offseason the largest contract for an undrafted free agent. This is a guy that's had to work his way up to this point. Again, 4 years, $85 million, set a record signing the biggest contract for an undrafted free agent in NBA history. And he scored the most points ever for an undrafted free agent in NBA history, surpassing Moses Malone with 52 points, and broke the Raptors' all-time scoring record of 53 points set by DeMar DeRozan. So big shout out to, excuse me, to Fred VanVleet. And then finally, in paying homage to the Super Bowl, Tom Brady, jersey sales set a new record. His merchandise sales, according to Fanatics, the NFL's official e-commerce partner, Brady became their best-selling NFL player ever for the 2-week period between the conference championship and the Super Bowl. He just keeps doing it and doing it both on the field and off the field. 10th Super Bowl for Mr. Brady. All right. That's all the time that I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me on a special birthday edition of Morning Joe right here on J&J Media Network, Facebook Live, Twitch TV, Twitter, and on YouTube. Mondays and Wednesday mornings, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 to 11 Central, and 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific. Hope you guys enjoy the Super Bowl this Sunday. And as always, have a lovely rest of your morning.